I guess getting launched 100 feet by a taxi buys you a sit-down with the man upstairs. He must have taken one look at my file, 10 years of soul-crushing corporate drudgery, and figured I was too pathetic to keep. So he sent me back. My life was saved, but my memory was wiped clean. Looking at the bombshell in the silk blouse and stilettos sitting by my hospital bed, I stroked my chin, deep in thought. So, you're telling me you're my girlfriend? Her cool, beautiful face didn't betray a single emotion. She just nodded. I gave her the once-over from the top of her elegant head to the tips of her killer heels and swallowed hard. Shaking my head, I said, I don't buy it, unless I get some proof. The smell of antiseptic was overwhelming. I opened my eyes to a ceiling so white it hurt. A dull buzz filled my head, like a beehive was throwing a rager in my skull. I tried to move, and pain shot through every inch of me. My left leg, encased in a plaster cast, was hoisted in the air in a deeply unflattering pose. You're awake. A woman's voice, cool and clear, came from my side. I turned my head with a grunt of effort. A woman sat in a chair next to the bed, posture perfect. She wore a tailored black suit, her legs crossed and sheathed in sheer stockings. A pair of sharp stiletto heels completed the picture, the points looking sharp enough to drive right through a man's heart. Her face was beautiful, but it was the aggressive kind of beautiful. Sharp features, pale skin, thin lips that were almost colorless. She was looking at me with a calm, steady gaze, like she was reviewing a quarterly report that didn't particularly interest her. My mind was a total blank. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? And more importantly, who is she? I opened my mouth, my throat as dry as sandpaper. Water. She didn't speak. She just stood, poured a glass of lukewarm water from a pitcher, stuck a straw in it, and held it to my lips. I drank it down like a man in the desert, and finally felt a flicker of life return. Who are you? I asked, looking her straight in the eye. Her gaze flickered for a fraction of a second, so fast I almost missed it. I'm your girlfriend. She sat back down, recrossing her legs. Her tone was as flat as if she were commenting on the weather. You still there? My girlfriend? I looked down at myself. I was wearing a standard issue blue and white hospital gown. My left leg was in a cast, my right arm was bandaged, and I was pretty sure my face had seen better days. Me, in this state, with a woman who looked like she belonged on the cover of Forbes. A trip to the pearly gates came with perks like this? Since when did the universe have such a generous benefits package for us wage slaves? My eyes, of their own accord, slid from her face down to her toned calves, and finally to those exquisite heels. I swallowed again, my throat suddenly parched. This made no sense. I tried to rummage through the empty files of my brain, but came up with nothing. I didn't know my name, my age, or how I'd managed to land a girlfriend so far out of my league. I can't remember anything, I said honestly. What did the doctors say? Car accident. You sustained a blow to the head, causing temporary amnesia, she stated, wasting no words. Oh, I nodded, then focused on her again, my eyes narrowed. And you said to my girlfriend? She met my gaze without flinching and let out a soft, hum. I stroked the stubble on my chin. It felt rough. I stared at her flawless, unreadable face and suddenly broke into a grin. I don't believe you. Her eyebrow twitched, a barely perceptible movement. I don't believe a guy like me could have a girlfriend as beautiful as you. I continued, my tone bordering on cocky. Unless you prove it to me. The room went silent. I could hear my own ragged breathing, a stark contrast to her steady, almost non-existent breaths. She just watched me, her eyes showing no anger, no embarrassment, only a deep, unreadable calm. A wave of doubt washed over me. Had I overplayed my hand? In my current half-dead state, if she just walked out, I probably couldn't even afford a nurse. Just as I was about to backpedal, she moved. She stood up and leaned over me. A light, cool fragrance filled my nostrils. Her face loomed closer, her skin so perfect I couldn't see a single pore. I could see her long eyelashes like tiny fans. My heart skipped a beat. What was she doing? Was she going to kiss me? Was this really happening? I instinctively shut my eyes. But the soft touch I was expecting on my lips landed on my forehead instead. It was a light, brief press, cool and quick. I opened my eyes. She had already straightened up, her icy composure back in place, though I thought I saw a hint of suspicious red at the tips of her ears. "Do you believe me now?" she asked. I just stared at her, my heart still hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I touched my forehead where her lips had been. "I'm starting to," I said, licking my chapped lips, shameless. "But the evidence is a little thin. Look, I can barely move. Eating and drinking are a real challenge. As my girlfriend, don't you think you should feed me?" I expected her to refuse, or at least call me a pig. But she just watched me for 2 silent seconds, then nodded. "Okay." With that, she picked up an apple and a paring knife from the bedside table and began to peel it. Her movements were elegant, but clumsy. The peel came off in short, uneven strips. Watching her struggle, my last shred of doubt vanished. No one would put that much detail into an act, right? A woman who looked like she'd never touched a dish in her life was here, peeling an apple for her boyfriend. I must have saved a bus full of puppies in a past life. She cut the peeled apple into small pieces, speared one with a toothpick, and held it to my lips. I bit down. It was sweet and crisp. "What's my name?" I mumbled around the apple. "Ethan Miller." "And yours?" She paused for a moment before answering. "Isabel Sterling." Ethan and Isabel. I repeated the names in my head. They sounded good together. "So, Isabel," I said, pushing my luck, "when can I get this cast off?" "The doctor said a few months." Her voice was still flat. "And you'll take care of me until then?" I blinked, trying to look as pathetic as possible. She glanced at me, the way you might look at a misbehaving child. "I will." Her confirmation made my heart sing. Amnesia was the best thing that ever happened to me. The old Ethan Miller was clearly some poor schlub grinding away in a cubicle. Otherwise, why would the universe take such pity on me? Now, with a clean slate, not only did I get a vacation from work, but I also scored a goddess for a girlfriend. This was a major win. I settled into my new role with gusto, letting her cater to my every need. She never showed much emotion and barely spoke, but I could tell she wasn't exactly experienced in the caregiving department. She'd spill soup on my gown when feeding me. She wouldn't wring out the washcloth properly, leaving water trickling down my neck. But she was patient. She would do it again and again until she got it right. Watching her, so serious and so clumsy, a strange feeling crept over me. This didn't feel like a doting girlfriend. It felt more like an intern trying desperately to complete a task. A week later, the doctor cleared me for release. In a wheelchair, of course. Isabel handled all the paperwork and wheeled me out of the hospital entrance. The sun felt warm on my skin. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath of free air. A black, ridiculously expensive-looking sedan pulled up silently in front of us. A driver in a suit and white gloves got out and respectfully opened the rear door. "Ms. Sterling." I blinked. "Ms. Sterling." Isabel gave a slight nod. "Arthur, give me a hand getting him in." Me, a 6'1" man, being referred to as something you get in. It took the combined efforts of me and Arthur, but we finally managed to stuff me and my cast-encased leg into the spacious back seat. Isabel slid in after me, and the door closed, sealing us off from the world. The car was huge inside, filled with the same cool fragrance she wore. The seats were buttery leather. "Are we rich?" I couldn't help but ask. She was scrolling through documents on an iPad and didn't look up. "We do okay." I watched the city streets blur past the window, a suspicion forming in my mind. This car, this driver, this casual, we do okay. Was it possible my past self wasn't a corporate drone, but a secret trust fund kid? But if I was that rich, how did I get mowed down by a taxi? Where was my personal driver? My bodyguards? It didn't add up. Whatever. No point in thinking about it. I had a beautiful woman by my side and a luxury car to ride in. Why complicate things? The car drove on, eventually entering a gated community I'd only ever seen in movies. A guard at the gate saluted as a massive, ornate iron gate swung open. We drove past perfectly manicured lawns and gardens before stopping in front of a 3-story modern mansion. My jaw dropped. This is my house. Our house, Isabel corrected, putting her iPad away. Arthur manhandled me out of the car and back into the wheelchair, then pushed me into a palace. The foyer had to be at least 25 feet high, with a giant crystal chandelier sparkling overhead. The marble floors shone like mirrors. A sweeping spiral staircase dominated one wall, which was adorned with abstract paintings I didn't understand. A woman in a maid's uniform came to greet us. "Miss, you're back. And this must be—" Her eyes landed on me, a mixture of curiosity and assessment. "Ethan Miller," Isabel introduced. "My boyfriend. He's had an accident, Maria. Please take good care of him." "Oh, of course, miss. Don't you worry," Maria said, nodding eagerly. She turned to me with a warm smile. "Welcome, Mr. Miller. Please come in." I was completely overwhelmed. Isabel pushed me across the enormous living room toward an elevator. Yes, an elevator. In the house. My entire worldview was being systematically dismantled. "My room is on the second floor. You'll stay there, too," she said as she pressed the button. "We're living together." My heart did a little flutter kick. She glanced at me. "You need someone to look after you, don't you?" The elevator doors opened, and she pushed me inside. In the confined space, her scent was even more potent. I snuck a glance at her. Her profile was perfect, her jawline sharp and serious. "So, Isabel," I clear my throat, "how long have we been together?" 6 months, she answered without a hint of hesitation. "And how did I land you?" I was dying to know. With her looks and her aura of power, she didn't seem like someone I could ever win over. Her finger paused on the elevator button. "You stood outside my office building with 999 roses and serenaded me with a guitar. The entire company came out to watch. It was so embarrassing that I finally agreed to go out with you," she said, her expression completely straight. I was speechless. That was the best I could do, and it sounded less like a romantic gesture and more like I was a stalker she finally gave in to just to make me go away. I tried to picture it. Some dope with a guitar, caterwauling at a skyscraper in front of hundreds of people. Yikes, that was cringeworthy. "I can play the guitar?" I asked, unconvinced. "Yes." "And I work at your company?" "Yes." "What's my job?" "Project coordinator." I breathed a sigh of relief. At least I wasn't the janitor. The elevator reached the second floor. Isabel pushed me out and down the hall to a door at the very end. "This is your room." The room was massive, bigger than any apartment I could imagine having. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a huge balcony, a king-size bed, and a walk-in closet. "I had all your things replaced," she said, gesturing to the closet. "Go see if they fit." I wheeled myself in and just about fell out of my chair. The closet was stocked with designer clothes, from casual wear to bespoke suits. The shoe racks were filled with brands I didn't recognize but knew were expensive. Watches, cufflinks, and tie clips were neatly arranged in a glass display case. This was mine. I picked up a shirt and glanced at the price tag. Damn, there were way too many zeros for me to count. Was I really this rich? A project coordinator who dressed like this? "Isabel, are you sure I'm not a trust fund kid just working at your company for fun?" I asked, holding on to one last shred of hope. Isabel leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed. "No," she said, shattering my fantasy. "You come from a very average background. I bought you all of this." My stomach dropped. "You're my sugar mama?" I asked carefully, her perfect brows finally furrowed, clearly offended by the term. "We're in a relationship. Is there a problem with me buying things for my boyfriend?" she retorted. "No. No problem at all," I said, waving my hands. "A rich, beautiful girlfriend buying me stuff? Absolutely no problem. The only problem was it felt way too good to be true. What had I ever done to deserve this? You should rest. I have some work to do. Maria will call you for dinner," she said, turning to leave. "Wait," I called out. She turned back. I scratched my head, feeling a little embarrassed. Going to the bathroom by myself is a bit of a challenge right now. Isabel's expression froze for a split second. She looked at me, then at my cast. After a few seconds, she sighed. It was the first time I'd seen an emotion on her face that even resembled exasperation. "I'll take care of it," she said and walked out. A few minutes later, she returned, pushing a brand new, high-tech looking portable commode. Well, at least she wasn't going to help me personally. And so began my life as a pampered invalid in a palace. Days were spent eating and sleeping. Maria took care of everything. Isabel was incredibly busy, often leaving before I woke up and coming home late. Sometimes I wouldn't see her at all, but she always checked on me once a day. Sometimes it was early in the morning before I was awake, other times late at night after I'd fallen asleep. I woke up thirsty a few times in the middle of the night to find her standing by my bed, just looking at me, her expression unreadable. When she wasn't home, I'd explore the mansion in my wheelchair. The place was absurdly large. I found a home theater and a full gym on the third floor. In her study, I saw shelves filled with books on business management and finance, and an entire wall of awards and certificates. Every single one of them had her name on it, Isabel Sterling. The whole thing felt more and more surreal. Me, Ethan Miller, a nobody project coordinator, had somehow managed to land a business prodigy of this caliber? What was so special about the old me? Was it really just the 999 roses and a cheesy love song? I didn't believe it. One afternoon, I was on the living room couch, eating a bowl of fruit Maria had cut for me and watching TV. It was a business news channel, and a familiar name caught my attention. The acquisition was personally spearheaded by Sterling Global's own CEO, Isabel Sterling. With her trademark aggressive strategy, she successfully outmaneuvered rival Vandergriff Holdings to bring Blue Horizon Technologies into the fold. A picture of Isabel appeared on the screen. She was in a white power suit, her hair in an elegant updo, her eyes sharp, radiating pure power. A piece of melon fell off my fork. Sterling Global. CEO? She told me she ran a company. She failed to mention it was a massive global enterprise. I hadn't just landed a rich girlfriend. I'd hit the jackpot and landed the queen of capitalism. Just as I was trying to process this, the doorbell rang. Maria went to answer it. A man was standing on the doorstep. He was tall, dressed in a flashy white suit, his hair slicked back with a gallon of gel. In his hands was a ridiculously large bouquet of red roses. He was handsome enough, I guess, but the smug, I own the world expression on his face was instantly irritating. Where's Isabel? The man asked, striding in like he owned the place. His eyes scanned the living room and finally landed on me. He looked me up and down, his brow furrowed in disdain. Who the hell are you? He asked, pointing at me with his chin. Before I could answer, Maria stepped in, looking flustered. Mr. Vandergriff, Miss Sterling isn't home. Not home. The man, apparently Mr. Vandergriff, sneered. She's not answering my calls. I figured she was hiding from me. Get out of my way. I'll find her myself. He started to head for the stairs. Mr. Vandergriff, you can't. Miss Sterling really isn't here. Maria tried in vain to stop him. I sat on a couch, popped the last piece of melon into my mouth, and slowly wiped my hands. I might have amnesia, but my gut was telling me this guy was bad news. Arrivad. Hey, I said. Vandergriff stopped and turned back, looking annoyed. You talking to me? This is my house. You want to see someone, you ask my permission first, I said lazily, leaning back into the couch cushions. He laughed as if I'd told the funniest joke in the world. Your house. Who do you think you are? Some cripple, telling me what to do. His eyes fell on my cast, his expression dripping with scorn. I didn't get angry. I just smiled. Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I'm Isabel Sterling's boyfriend. And you're not. I put extra emphasis on the last two words. Vandergriff's face changed, as if I'd just slapped him. You? Isabel's boyfriend. He pointed at me, laughing hysterically. Don't make me laugh. Why would Isabel ever be interested in a piece of trash like you? Are you the new pool boy or something? I'm a new boyfriend, hired specifically to get rid of annoying pests who show up uninvited. I shot back. You're asking for it. His face darkened. He stormed over and grabbed me by the collar of my shirt. I stayed seated, looking up at him. What? You want to start a fight? In someone else's house? Classy, Vandergriff. You little punk. I'll teach you to talk to me like that, he snarled, tightening his grip and yanking me up from the couch. He pulled me off balance, and I nearly fell. Maria screamed. Just then, a voice as cold as ice cut through the air from the doorway. Blake Vandergriff, what are you doing? Let him go. It was Isabel. She was back. Isabel stood in the doorway, her face a frozen mask of fury. Behind her was a man in glasses who looked like her assistant, clutching a stack of files and looking terrified. Seeing Isabel didn't make Blake let go. In fact, he tightened his grip, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face as if he'd caught her in the act. Isabel, you're finally seeing me. I walk in and find this lowlife in your house, claiming to be your boyfriend. I'm just teaching him a lesson for you, he said, as if he were doing her a favor. Isabel walked in, the sharp clicks of her heels on the marble floor echoing like gunshots. Each step seemed to land squarely on Blake's nerve endings. She stopped right in front of us. I said, "Let him go." Her voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that was impossible to ignore. "Isabel, don't let him fool you. I've seen guys like this a million times. They're just after your money. Tell me how much he's asking for, and I'll double it to make him disappear." Blake blabbered on. I was getting tired of his voice. I lifted my hand and placed it on his, the one still clutching my shirt. "Dude," I said slowly, "you're hurting me." "Good," he spat. "I'm a pretty easygoing guy," I sighed, "but I'm territorial." Then my hand clamped down. A sharp crack echoed through the room, followed by Blake's pig-like squeal. "Arg!" My hand. He let go of me instantly, clutching his wrist, his face pale and beaded with sweat. I straightened my shirt collar and calmly sat back down on the couch, crossing my good leg over the other. "I told you to let go," I said, my face a mask of innocence. Isabel and her assistant were stunned. Maria's jaw was on the floor. No one had expected me, the cripple, to have the strength to snap Blake Vandergrift's wrist. To be honest, I didn't know I had it in me, either. Maybe the car accident unlocked some hidden potential, or maybe I used to be a bouncer. Whatever. It felt pretty damn good. You hit me." Blake stammered, his face contorted in pain. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "My father is the CEO of Vandergrift Holdings. I could crush you like a bug." "Oh, so you're his son," I said with mock realization. I looked over at Isabel. "Isabel, isn't Vandergrift Holdings the company you just crushed in that acquisition deal?" I made sure to stress the word crushed. Blake's face went from white to a deep, blotchy red. Isabel's lips seemed to curve upwards in the slightest hint of a smile, but it was gone in an instant. "Blake," she finally said, her voice laced with annoyance, "you're not welcome here. Please leave." "Isabel," he pleaded, "our families arranged our engagement years ago. You can't just throw that away for some boy toy you picked up off the street. First of all, I never agreed to any engagement. Second, Isabel moved to my side, her hand naturally coming up to straighten my collar in a surprisingly intimate gesture. "He is not a boy toy. He's my boyfriend, Ethan Miller. And third, you don't get to touch my man." She was looking at Blake when she said it, but that last line was delivered with a chilling, protective fury. My heart did a little flip. Damn, that move, that look. She was incredible. Blake was completely floored. He'd probably never seen this side of Isabel. To him, she was just a cold, strategic business partner, a potential merger. Not a woman who would stand up for a man. You too," he stammered, pointing at us, shaking with rage. "Are you going to get out? Or do you need help?" I added from my comfortable spot on the couch. Blake shot me a look of pure venom, then glanced at Isabel one last time before clutching his wrist and scurrying out the door. Once he was gone, the tension in the room instantly evaporated. The assistant in glasses let out a long sigh of relief, looking at me with something approaching awe. About Mr. Vandergrift," Maria began, still worried. "It's fine, Maria. Let him go," Isabel said, waving a hand dismissively. Then she turned to me. She sat down next to me on the couch. We were so close I could smell her perfume. She took my arm, the one Blake had grabbed, and examined it. "Does it hurt?" she asked. I shook my head. "Nah, he hits like a kitten." She didn't say anything, just gently touched a red mark on my arm. Her fingertips were cool. My pulse quickened. Leo, right?" I said, looking at the assistant who was still standing there like a statue. Oh yes, Mr. Miller. I'm Leo," he stammered, practically bowing. "Thanks for your help today," I said politely, even though all he did was stand there and look scared. Not at all," Leo said, looking overwhelmed. "You were amazing, Mr. Miller. You have no idea how arrogant that Blake Vandergrift usually is. It was great to finally see him get what he deserved. He even gave me a discreet thumbs up." I smiled, then turned my gaze back to Isabel. She was watching me, her expression complex, no longer just calm and detached. There was surprise, curiosity, and something else. Something I couldn't quite decipher. "Have you had training?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. Can't remember. Must be muscle memory." It was a total lie, of course, but amnesia was the perfect excuse. She fell silent. For a moment, the only sound in the living room was our breathing. Ms. Sterling," Leo broke the silence. "The follow-up documents on the Blue Horizon deal. Leave them on the table." You can go home. Isabel cut him off. Right? Leo said, looking relieved. He dropped the files and practically sprinted out of the house. Now, it was just the two of us. The atmosphere suddenly felt charged. She was still sitting next to me, showing no signs of moving. Today, she started, then paused, as if searching for the right words. How did I do? I jumped in, like a kid hoping for praise. She looked at me, and for the first time, a genuine, though faint, smile touched her lips. Not bad, she said. You exceeded my expectations. So, is there a reward? I pushed, my eyes shining. The smile vanished, replaced by her usual stoic mask. What kind of reward do you want? My eyes drifted to her thin lips. How about you prove you're my girlfriend one more time? Isabel didn't answer. She just looked at me for a few seconds, then stood up. I am tired. I'm going upstairs to rest. She tossed the words over her shoulder and walked away, her steps a little faster than usual. Her retreating back looked, for a split second, like she was fleeing. I watched her go, stroked my chin, and smiled. I was getting somewhere. The next few days were quiet. Blake didn't show his face again, but the atmosphere between Isabel and me had changed. She no longer treated me like an object to be cared for. She started conversations, even if they were just mundane questions like, does your leg still hurt? Or, how are you feeling today? She started spending more time at home, too. Sometimes she'd be back in the afternoon, working from the other end of the living room. We wouldn't talk, but whenever I looked up, she was there. It was a strange, comfortable feeling. I noticed how focused she was when she worked, her brow slightly furrowed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The afternoon sun would stream through the windows, casting a golden glow around her, softening her icy edges. One day, Maria made chicken soup. I had a bowl, and it was delicious, so I carried my bowl over to her, hobbling on my new crutches. Have some soup, I said, offering her the bowl. She looked up from a mountain of spreadsheets, glanced at the oily broth, and wrinkled her nose. I don't like that. Just try it. Maria cooked it for hours, I insisted. She hesitated, then took the bowl and had a small sip. Well, I asked, full of hope. Too greasy, she said, but then took another sip. I watched, absurdly pleased, as she finished the entire bowl. When she was done, I naturally reached for the empty bowl. I'll get you a napkin. I turned to go, but she grabbed my hand. Her hand was cool and soft. I froze. Don't, she said, letting go. She took a napkin from the dispenser next to her and dabbed her lips. Your leg isn't healed. Don't move around so much. Her tone was as flat as ever, but my heart started racing anyway. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. I just couldn't figure Isabel out. If she was just using me to get rid of Blake, she didn't have to be this. Nice. She could have just left me in Maria's care and gone on being a high-powered CEO. But she didn't. She spent time with me, paid attention to how I felt, and even showed moments of what looked like genuine concern. But if she actually liked me, why was she always so distant, so controlled? We hadn't even properly held hands. That kiss on the forehead in the hospital and today's accidental touch were the most physical contact we'd had. What was going through her head? Was this all an act? Or did she actually have feelings for me that she was either unwilling or unable to express? I decided to test the waters one more time. The weekend weather was perfect. My leg was healing well enough that I could walk slowly without crutches, albeit with a limp. Let's go out, I said to Isabel at breakfast. She looked up from her newspaper. Where? I don't know, just out. I've been cooped up in here forever, I said, putting on my best puppy dog face. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay. I was ecstatic. She changed out of her usual business attire into a beige trench coat, a white cashmere sweater, and jeans with a pair of flat ankle boots. She let her hair down, letting it fall naturally over her shoulders. The look softened her sharp edges, making her seem more gentle and approachable. I found myself staring. Let's go, she said, grabbing her car keys. This time, she drove herself, sliding into the driver's seat of a sleek sports car. I sat in the passenger's seat, watching as she expertly navigated out of the estate. Where to, she asked. How about a movie? I suggested, going for the most classic date activity I could think of. She seemed surprised, as if the thought of going to a movie with her boyfriend had never occurred to her. Okay, she agreed. We went to multiplex at a mall. It was clearly Isabel's first time in such a place. She stared at the ticket kiosk like it was alien technology until I showed her how to use it. She was even more lost at the concession stand, staring blankly at the combo deals. I found her bewildered expression both hilarious and adorable. The all-powerful CEO, stumped by popcorn and soda. I bought the largest bucket of popcorn and 2 Cokes. She looked at the bucket with a frown. "This is junk food. It's essential for the date experience," I said, placing the bucket in her lap. "A date without popcorn has no soul." She held the giant bucket, her expression a mix of confusion and disdain, but she didn't argue. We saw a romantic comedy. The theater was dark and filled with cuddly couples. I snuck a peek at Isabel. She was sitting perfectly straight, her eyes glued to the screen as if she were analyzing a business proposal. Halfway through, a funny scene had the whole theater roaring with laughter. I laughed along, and when I turned to look at her, I saw the corners of her mouth were turned up in a smile. It was a small, fleeting smile, but in the darkness it was real. My heart skipped another beat. I casually reached over and placed my hand over hers on the armrest. Her hand was cool. She flinched at my touch, but didn't pull away. Her whole body tensed for a second, then she relaxed, letting me hold her hand. I was overjoyed. Pushing my luck, I gently traced circles on her palm with my thumb. She tensed again and whipped her head around to look at me. I couldn't see her expression in the dark, but I could feel her gaze on me. I just grinned back at her. When the movie ended and the lights came up, she snatched her hand back, her face once again a cool mask, but the bright red tips of her ears gave her away. We walked out of the theater in silence. It was a little awkward, but also sweet. "Where to next?" she asked, breaking the silence. "The arcade." I suggested another dating hotspot. Isabel looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Come on, it'll be fun. I'll teach you," I said, taking her hand and pulling her toward the flashing lights and loud noises. This time, she only put up a token resistance before letting me lead her. It turns out that taking a hyper-competitive, gaming-illiterate ice queen to an arcade is a recipe for a hilarious disaster. Racing games? She drove straight into a wall. Basketball? Her shots managed to avoid the hoop with surgical precision. Dance Dance Revolution? She stood on the platform like a petrified statue. But I was having the time of my life. I wasn't playing the games. I was watching her frown in frustration, watching her shoot me death glares when I laughed, watching her awkwardly try to mimic the other players. She wasn't the CEO of Sterling Global anymore. She was just Isabel, a little clumsy, a little cute, and try her best to learn how to date. Finally, I pulled her over to a claw machine. I pointed at an ugly, husky plushie inside. "I want that one." Isabel glanced at it, her expression full of distaste. "It's hideous. I like hideous." She fed a few dollars into the machine and began her epic battle with the claw. She was intensely focused, as if she were planning a corporate takeover. She calculated the trajectory, adjusted the angle, but every time, the claw would weakly fail to grab the husky. I stood beside her, laughing so hard my stomach hurt. After a dozen tries and about $20, her face was dark. "This is ridiculous. The machine is rigged," she declared. "Let me try," I said, laughing as I nudged her aside. I put in $1. I waggled the joystick a bit, then slammed the button. The claw descended, perfectly grabbed the husky by its head, lifted it up, and dropped it neatly into the chute. I pulled the ugly dog out and dangled it in front of her triumphantly. "See? It's all about skill." She stared at me, then at the husky, her expression unreadable. "For you," I said, pushing the plushie into her arms. She held the uniquely ugly dog, stunned. "For me? Yeah, a souvenir from our date," I said with a grin. She looked down at the toy, silent for a long moment. Then she looked up at me and said softly, "Thank you." In that moment, I saw something in her eyes. It was like a layer of ice had melted, revealing a clear, deep lake beneath. On the drive back, she held the husky the whole time. The mood in the car was light. We talked about the movie, the games, the ugly dog. She was more talkative than I'd ever heard her, even playfully arguing with me. I felt like the invisible wall between us was finally starting to crumble. She was starting to like me. For real. The thought made me feel like I could fly. It was dark by the time we got back to the mansion. Maria had dinner ready. As we ate, Isabel placed a husky on the chair next to her, as if guarding it. After dinner, she was about to head to her study to work. "Don't go," I said. She turned to look at me. "It's the weekend. Take a break," I said. "How about another movie? In a home theater?" She hesitated for a second, then nodded. The home theater was incredible, with a massive screen, surround sound, and reclining leather chairs. I picked a classic, tear-jerker romance. We sat side by side, with an empty seat between us. The movie was emotional. During a scene where the main characters were saying a tearful goodbye in the rain, I heard a faint sniffle from beside me. I turned to look. In the darkness, I could see Isabel's shoulders shaking slightly. She was crying. My heart softened. I moved over into the seat next to her and gently put my arm around her shoulders. Her body went rigid. "Don't move," I whispered. "Just let me hold you." She didn't move again. She just leaned her head softly against my shoulder. Her hair was soft and smelled incredible. Her body was small and warm in my arms. I felt like I was holding the entire world. I don't know when the movie ended. We just sat there in the dark, holding each other. "Ethan," she said after a long time, her voice muffled against my shirt. "Yeah. Will you ever get your memory back?" There was a subtle tremor of fear in her voice. My heart seized. She was afraid of me getting my memory back. Why? If she really liked me, shouldn't she want me to remember our past together? Unless we didn't have a past. Unless it was all a lie. The serenade, the roses, all of it. A story she made up. She had been lying to me from the very beginning. The thought was like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. My arm around her tightened unconsciously. "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing my change in mood. "Nothing," I said, letting her go so I could look her in the eyes. "Even if I do get it back, so what? All I know is that right now, I really, really like you." And it was the truth. Whatever her reasons, whatever her original plan was, I was all in. I had fallen for her. For the cold, clumsy, beautiful woman who got frustrated by claw machines and cried at sad movies. She looked at me, her eyes glistening. "Me too," she whispered. I couldn't hold back any longer. I leaned in and kissed her. Her lips were just as I imagined, cool and soft. She was stiff at first, but then she started to kiss me back, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. The kiss deepened, and I felt like I was drowning, not from lack of air, but from pure happiness. She really did like me. After that kiss, our relationship changed completely. We still slept in separate rooms, mostly because my leg wasn't fully healed, and she was afraid of bumping in the night. But in every other way, we were like any other couple. She'd kiss me goodbye in the morning and bring me small gifts when she came home from work, a book, a quirky gadget. She even bought me a guitar and asked me to play for her. I held the guitar, completely baffled. I don't remember how. She wasn't disappointed. "That's okay," she said. "I'll sign you up for lessons. You can learn again." And so, a man I presumed to be in his late 20s began taking guitar lessons. My teacher was a college kid who gave me a look of pure, "How did you manage that?" Every time Isabel dropped me off in her six-figure sports car, I felt like a bona fide kept man, and a talentless one at that. Life was so good it felt like a dream. And if it hadn't been for the employee ID card, I might have just kept on dreaming. Isabel was out of town on a business trip for a few days. I was bored and decided to organize the mountain of new clothes she'd bought me. At the bottom of a drawer, tucked beneath a pile of cashmere sweaters, I found an old, wrinkled suit jacket. The fabric was cheap, the style was dated. It looked completely out of place in my palatial closet. Curious, I picked it up and felt the pockets. I found a plastic card. It was an employee ID, a blue lanyard, a white card with my picture on it. The man in the photo wore the same cheap suit. His hair was a mess, and he wore a pair of generic black-rimmed glasses. He was smiling at the camera, but it was a pathetic, eager-to-please kind of smile. The smile of a stranger. Beneath the photo was my information. Name, Ethan Miller. Department, Project Management. Title, Coordinator. ID, SG09527. I stared at the card for a long, long time. Then, fragmented images began to flash in my mind. Crowded subways, cold microwave lunches, fluorescent lights that never turned off, a boss yelling, colleagues whispering, a client sneering. I saw me bowing and scraping. I saw me drinking cheap whiskey with a client until I threw up, all for a minor contract. I saw me sitting alone in a tiny apartment, staring at a cup of ramen with a sigh. The images were like knives twisting in my brain. So that was real. That was my life. The life of a pathetic, faceless corporate drone with no dignity. And Isabel, I remembered her, too. I remembered seeing her for the first time at the annual company gala. She was on stage, the CEO of Sterling Global, giving a speech. She was brilliant, bathed in spotlights, while I was just one of the thousands of anonymous faces in the crowd. I had never spoken a single word to her. We were from different universes. So the serenade, the 999 roses, her being embarrassed into dating me. It was all a lie. All of it. Why would she do it? Clutching the ID card, I stormed into her study. I started tearing the place apart, yanking open drawers, pulling books off shelves. Finally, in the bottom drawer of her desk, I found a locked file box. I didn't have a key. My vision tinged with red. I grabbed the lock and wrenched it apart with my bare hands. Inside was not a corporate secret, but a single document. A relationship agreement. Party of the first part, Isabel Sterling. Party of the second part, Ethan Miller. The terms were simple. Ethan Miller would act as Isabel Sterling's boyfriend for a term of 1 year. In return, she would cover all his expenses. Upon completion of the term, she would pay him the sum of $1 million. At the bottom was Isabel's elegant, sweeping signature. The line for my signature was blank. The date on the agreement was the day after my car accident. Of course, I wasn't her boyfriend. I was an actor she had hired. $1 million prop. I held the contract, the blood freezing in my veins. My beautiful dream, the love I thought was real, was nothing but a business transaction. I was such an idiot, a complete and utter fool. I started to laugh, and then the tears came. I don't remember walking back to my room. I packed a suitcase, stuffing it with all the designer clothes, the watches, the shoes she had bought for me. Then I put on the old, cheap suit from the drawer. I took all the cash from my wallet. It was less than $300, the sum total of my former life. I placed the employee ID and the relationship agreement on the bedside table. Then, leaning on my crutch, I walked out of that mansion without a backward glance. I didn't say goodbye to Maria or to anyone. I came like a thief in the night, and I left the same way. The only difference was when I arrived, I had nothing but hope. When I left, I still had nothing, but now my heart was shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't until I was outside the gates that I realized I had nowhere to go. I didn't know where my old apartment was. My phone, wallet, and ID had been lost in the accident. All I had was $300 and a bad leg. The sky darkened. The city lights began to glow, bright and beautiful and mocking. I just felt cold. I limped along the side of the road, with no destination in mind. I passed a cheap phone store and went in, using my meager cash to buy a simple burner phone. I turned it on, my thumb hovering over the keypad. There was only one number I remembered, a number that felt like it was carved into my soul. Isabel's. I stared at the familiar digits, my hand trembling, but I couldn't bring myself to press call. What would I say? Yell at her for lying to me? Beg her not to leave me? Pathetic. Whatever else I was, I still had a shred of pride left. I deleted the number. I found a park and collapsed onto a bench. It was late, and the park was deserted. I hugged my crutch and stared up at the moon. I remembered our date at the movies, her fumbling with the claw machine, her crying in my arms, the feel of her lips on my forehead. The memories that were so sweet just hours ago now felt like acid in my veins. Why did she do it? Just to get rid of Blake? Out of all the thousands of employees at her company, why pick me, the most insignificant one of all? Was it because I had the accident, lost my memory, and became the perfect, controllable puppet I couldn't figure out? And I didn't want it anymore. From now on, we were done. My life was back to square one. Actually, it was worse than square one. At least before the amnesia, I was just a sad sack, not a broken-hearted one. I curled up on the bench and drifted into a restless sleep. I dreamed I was back at the pearly gates. St. Peter looked at me and shook his head. You poor fool, he sighed. I sent you back to start over, not to get your heart broken. I messed up, didn't I? I asked him. He just waved his hand, and I woke up. It was dawn. Early morning joggers were already populating the park. I dragged my exhausted body off the bench. I needed to find a place to live. I needed to get a job. I needed to survive. Relying on a faint flicker of memory, I took a bus to a rundown neighborhood. It felt familiar. I went from building to building, and finally, in one stairwell, I saw a door with an eviction notice taped to it. My name was on the notice. This was it. I ripped off the notice and used my crutch to pry open the door. The smell of mildew hit me like a physical blow. The apartment was tiny, barely a room. A bed, a desk, and a closet. On the desk was a petrified cup of instant ramen. This was my home. Compared to Isabel's mansion, it was a hovel, but it felt safe. It was real. I spent all day cleaning. Then I went to a small diner nearby and got a job washing dishes. The owner was reluctant, seeing my limp, but I begged him, telling him I would do anything for room and board. He took pity on me. My new life began. I washed dishes from 10 in the morning until 10 at night. My back ached constantly. I slept on a cot in the storeroom. It was hard, exhausting work, but strangely, I felt grounded. I no longer had to wonder if I was living in a dream or worry about when I would wake up. This was reality in all its brutal glory. I tried not to think about Isabel. I locked all my memories of her in the deepest, darkest corner of my mind. I thought if I just ignored them, they would go away. I was wrong. A world without her was just gray. When I ate, I'd remember the way she wrinkled her nose at the chicken soup. When I walked, I'd remember holding her hand in the arcade. When I tried to sleep, I'd remember the feel of her head on my shoulder. She was a ghost that haunted my every waking moment. I stopped sleeping. I lost weight. The guys at the diner said I looked like a zombie. I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I've been washing dishes for 2 weeks. One night, I dragged my tired body back to the storeroom. The door was ajar, and a light was on inside. I thought it was a burglar. I grabbed a nearby broom and shoved the door open, and then I froze. Standing in the middle of the tiny storeroom was a person I never thought I'd see again. Isabel. She was as beautiful as ever, but she looked exhausted. She wore an expensive coat, but it was dusty, and she looked like she'd been through hell. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she'd been crying for days. She just stood there, staring at me. The broom fell from my hand with a clatter. How did she find me? I started, but my throat was so dry I couldn't speak. She took a step toward me. Ethan. Her voice was hoarse. Why didn't you answer my calls? I subconsciously touched the burner phone in my pocket. It had never rung. Oh, right. New number. I lost my phone, I muttered, looking away. I couldn't meet her eyes. Why did you leave? She asked again, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. What could I say? That I discovered your secret? That I know I was just a pawn in your game? You shouldn't be here. You should go, I said, turning my body to let her pass. She didn't move. Come back with me, she said, her voice commanding. I let out a bitter laugh. Go back where? That mansion is your home, not mine. My name is Ethan Miller, project coordinator at Sterling Global, ID number SG09527. I live in a crappy apartment, take the subway to work, and eat $10 takeout. I'm not your rich, pampered boyfriend. The words I've been holding back for weeks came pouring out. Each one was a fresh stab to my own heart. The color drained from Isabel's face. She looked at me, her lips trembling, speechless. You remember? Yeah, I remember, I said with a self-deprecating smirk. I remember how pathetic I was. And I remember you, the great Ms. Sterling, playing me for a fool. I didn't, she cried, rushing forward and grabbing my arm. I wasn't playing you. You weren't. I shook her off, taking a step back. Then what about the relationship agreement? $1 million. Very generous, Ms. Sterling. But even I have my price, and it's not that. The agreement was... She started to explain, but seemed at a loss. Enough. I cut her off. The game is over. Thanks for the care, but I'm done playing. Please leave, and don't come back. I turned my back on her and started making my bed, a pile of cardboard boxes on the floor. I heard a choked sob from behind me. My heart ached, but I didn't turn around. After a long time, the crying stopped. Ethan, she said, her voice raw. Do you really think I was just using you? I didn't say anything. Yes, I admit it, she said, and her words were like a physical blow. At first Blake was pressuring me, using our family's business ties to try and force me into a marriage. I was desperate. Then, Leo told me you'd been in an accident and lost your memory. And I had this crazy idea. I just wanted you to pretend for a little while until I could deal with the Vandergrifts. I was going to give you the money and let you go. I wrote up that agreement. I never thought you'd see it. But her voice broke. I never expected this. I never expected you to be so infuriating and funny. You made me eat popcorn. You got so happy over a stupid, ugly stuffed animal. And I never, ever expected to fall in love with you. Ethan, she said, moving behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. Please come home. Forget the agreement. Forget everything. We can start over. Her body was trembling. Her tears soaked through my shirt, hot against my skin. I stood frozen. I could feel the sincerity in her words. But my logical mind screamed at me not to believe her. A powerful CEO falling for a nobody from the mailroom? That was a fairy tale. I pried her hands off me and turned to face her. Stop acting, Ms. Sterling. You're very good. I almost believed you, I said, each word deliberate. But I'm done being the fool. The last bit of color drained from her face. She looked at me with an expression of pure, disbelieving despair. You don't believe me? I said nothing. My silence was the cruelest answer. She laughed, a broken, ugly sound. Fine, she whispered, backing away. Fine, it was all me. I was the fool. She reached the door and gave me one last look. It was a look of anguish, of finality, and of a terrifying resolve. Then she turned and ran into the night. I stood there, feeling hollowed out. I didn't know if I'd done the right thing. I might have just pushed away the only happiness I would ever have. But I didn't have the courage to get my heart broken again. I thought that was the end of it. The next day, the world went insane. I was at the diner, and I saw it on the small TV in the corner. In a shocking press conference this morning, Sterling Global CEO Isabel Sterling announced she is unilaterally transferring her entire 51% controlling stake in the company to a man identified as Ethan Miller. Sources say Mr. Miller is a low-level employee at the company. In her statement, Ms. Sterling said she was doing it to win back the man I love. Sterling Global stock has plummeted 30% on the news, and the board of directors is in an emergency session. I stared at Isabel's pale, determined face on the screen. The bowl in my hand slipped and shattered on the floor. She was insane, utterly insane. I ran out of the diner, sprinting down the street like a madman. I had to find her. I had to stop her. How could she do this? How could she throw away her entire life's work for me? I flagged down a taxi and yelled the address for Sterling Global Headquarters. The driver gave me a weird look. I was in my greasy work clothes, a mess. You sure you want to go there, kid? It's a madhouse. Just drive. I roared. The car sped through the city. I had only one thought in my head. I couldn't let her do this. I couldn't be the person who ruined her. 40 minutes later, we pulled up to the Sterling Global Tower. The entrance was swarmed with reporters, a wall of cameras and microphones. I paid the driver, threw open the door, and tried to push my way through. Hey, where do you think you're going? A security guard blocked me. I need to see Isabel Sterling. I'm Ethan Miller. I yelled. Ethan Miller? The name was like a magic word. Every camera, every microphone swiveled to face me. That's him. My God, look at how he's dressed. Mr. Miller, what is your relationship with Miss Sterling? What do you have to say about this incredible gift? Flashbulbs popped in my eyes, and I was suffocated by a forest of microphones. I was completely overwhelmed, shoved back and forth by the crowd. Just as I thought I was going to be trampled, the crowd parted. Leo, Isabel's assistant, burst through with a team of security guards and pulled me out of the scrum. Mr. Miller, thank God you're here. Ms. Sterling, she's locked herself in her office and won't see anyone. Leo was frantic. I followed him to the executive elevator and up to the top floor. The hallway was filled with anxious-looking executives. When they saw me, all their eyes fixed on me with a mixture of anger, confusion, and hope. I ignored them and went straight to the CEO's office. The door was closed. I took a deep breath and knocked. Isabel, it's me. Ethan. Silence. Isabel, open the door. Please, let me explain. Still nothing. Isabel Sterling. I yelled, pounding on the door. Open this door right now, or I swear I will break it down. The executives behind me gasped. Mr. Miller, please calm down. I ignored them. I took 2 steps back and slammed my shoulder into the door. With a loud crack, the door burst open. The office was dark, the curtains drawn. Isabel was sitting in her large leather chair, her back to me, staring out at the city. Her silhouette looked fragile and utterly alone. I walked slowly toward her. What are you doing here? she asked, her voice raspy. She didn't turn around. I'm here to stop you from doing something stupid, I said, coming to stand beside her. She looked terrible. She was pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes. I'm not being stupid, she said quietly. I'm being perfectly rational. This company is my life. But without you, my life has no meaning. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Isabel, I knelt down and took her cold hand. Listen to me. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have left. I'm an idiot. A complete, total idiot. But you can't do this. This company was your father's legacy. It's everything to you. You can't just give it up for someone like me. You're not someone like me, she said, turning to face me, her eyes bloodshot. You're the man I love. I looked into her eyes, and all the words caught in my throat. I had lost. Completely and utterly. Isabel. I pressed her hand to my cheek. Let's stop this, okay? Take back the shares. Be the brilliant CEO you are. And I'll come back. I'll stay with you. I'll never leave you again. She stared at me for a long, long time. Really? Really? I said, nodding emphatically. Do you remember what you were like before? She asked suddenly. I paused, then gave a bitter smile. I remember. Pathetic, weak. A doormat. No, she shook her head. That's not how I saw you. She opened a drawer and took out a picture frame. It was a candid photo. The background was an orphanage. A young man, me, was kneeling on the ground, wiping the tears from a little girl's face. He was smiling, a gentle, kind smile, and the sun was lighting up his face. Is this me? I whispered. Yes, Isabel's eyes softened. My parents died when I was young. I grew up in an orphanage. This one, I've been a donor for years. 3 years ago, I visited and I saw you there. You volunteered every weekend. You played with the children, fixed their broken toys. You didn't have much money, but you donated half your salary to them every month. I remember thinking, who is this man? So foolish and so good. I took this picture, and from that day on, I couldn't get you out of my head. I had Leo find out who you were. I always wanted to meet you, but I didn't know how. I was afraid I would scare you off. I was afraid the difference between our worlds would be too much. Then you had the accident. I know I took advantage of your amnesia, but I was terrified of losing the only chance I thought I would ever have to get close to you. I listened, stunned. So that was it. She knew me. She had been watching me for years. I wasn't some random accident in her life. I was a deliberate, calculated plan. I looked at the warm, smiling man in the photo, then at the incredible woman who had just tried to give me everything, and my eyes filled with tears. What a fool I'd been. What had I almost thrown away? Isabel. I choked out, unable to speak. She reached out and gently wiped a tear from my cheek. Ethan, I don't want Sterling Global. I don't want the shares. I don't want any of it. She looked me straight in the eye and said, her voice clear and strong, I just want you. There was another press conference. This time, I was standing by her side. In front of all the cameras, she held my hand and announced she was rescinding her previous offer. The ownership of Sterling Global would remain unchanged. So, Ms. Sterling, could you clarify your relationship with Mr. Miller? A brave reporter asked. Isabel looked at me, her face breaking into a smile more beautiful and radiant than any I had ever seen. He's the love of my life, she said. The only man I will ever love. The flashbulbs went off like a firework display. I looked at her, and I knew my life would never be the same. The storm passed. Sterling Global stock, after a wild ride, miraculously recovered and even climbed higher. Everyone now knew that the Ice Queen CEO had a man she loved more than her own empire. And I, Ethan Miller, went from a nobody to the most envied man in the city. I moved back into the mansion, but this time I wasn't an actor. I was home. I didn't go back to my old job. Isabel created a new position for me, special assistant to the CEO. My office was right next to hers. My job description was simple. Be with her. I'd sit in on board meetings, silently playing on my phone while executives with 7-figure salaries nervously presented their reports to her. Sometimes she'd give me a look, and I'd get up and pour her a glass of water. The executives would stare at me as if I had two heads. They didn't get it, but we did. At lunch, we wouldn't go to fancy restaurants. We'd eat the packed lunch I had made that morning. After regaining my memory, I realized my old self was a good person, but utterly useless in every other regard. So I was learning new skills, like cooking. My first few attempts were culinary disasters, but Isabel was my biggest supporter. She would eat my burnt or undercooked creations without complaint, offering constructive feedback like, "This is an improvement. The fish is only raw on the inside this time." With her encouragement, I actually got good at it. Our life fell into a beautiful, comfortable rhythm. We were just a normal couple. We went to movies, walked in the park, went to the arcade. She was still terrible at the claw machine, but now she would just point and command, "Get me that one. The pink bunny." And I would, and she would hug it like it was the greatest prize in the world. At night, she would curl up behind me, her face buried in my back. She said it made her feel safe. I would often wake up in the middle of the night and just watch her sleep, feeling like the luckiest man alive. "Why me?" I asked her once. She looked up at me from my arms and said, with the utmost seriousness, "Because you're worth it. You are the kindest, warmest person I have ever known. You were always the one shining a light, Ethan. Not me." I held her tight, vowing to spend the rest of my life protecting the happiness we had found. Life was perfect. Almost. Blake Vandergriff showed up at the mansion one day. He looked like he had aged 10 years. "I came to apologize," he said, and then he bowed. "I'm sorry. For everything." He looked up, his face grim. "My family's company. It's going under. Sterling is crushing us. My father had a stroke. So you want me to ask Isabel to back off?" I asked. He shook his head. "It wouldn't matter. She'll only listen to you." I don't get it. What's so special about you?" I thought for a moment. "I guess I'm just better looking." He just stared at me, then walked away without another word. That night, I told Isabel about it. "Do you want me to let them off the hook?" she asked. "No," I said, stroking her hair. "Business is business. I was just thinking, he's kind of pathetic. He made his choices," she said, her CEO face back on. "Some people only learn when they lose everything." I smiled. She was ruthless, and I loved her for it. The next day, I took her to the intersection where my life had changed. "This is it," I said, where the taxi hit me. She grabbed my hand, her knuckles white. If that driver hadn't hit me, I mused, if I hadn't lost my memory, we'd still be strangers. Just then, a nervous-looking man in a taxi driver's uniform approached us, holding a bag of fruit. "Hey, you remember me?" he asked, wringing his hands. "I'm the one who hit you. I ran. I'm so sorry. I haven't slept since. Here, take this. I'll pay for all your medical bills. I swear." He shoved the fruit in my hands, then pulled a crumpled lottery ticket from his pocket. "I don't have much cash, but I bought this yesterday. Maybe it's a winner. Please take it." He forced the ticket into my hand and then ran off as if the hounds of hell were after him. I looked at the ticket, completely bewildered. Isabel took it from me and read the numbers aloud. 000407182931. She trailed off, her eyes widening. "What is it?" I asked. "Ethan," she said, her voice filled with awe. "This is your birthday. My birthday. The day we first met at the orphanage. The day of your accident. And my office number." I stared at the ticket as a memory of a dream surfaced. St. Peter sighing, "You poor fool." We ran to the nearest convenience store. The TV was announcing last night's lottery numbers. And the winning numbers are 000407182931. The bonus ball is 13. Grand prize, $50 million. We stared at each other, then burst out laughing. "Well," Isabel said, leaning her head on my shoulder, "it seems like the universe decided you'd suffered enough and sent you a pretty big bonus." I looked out at the sun and smiled. Maybe it had. It had sent me an impossible prize and the only woman I would ever love. End.